Hey, we're picking up where we left off. I hope you had a good weekend. I did. My wife and I, we did a little staycation. So we got to see, we went to Nashville. We got to see a bunch of people making fools of themselves and got some really good sermon prep done. So really grateful for that time. I'm not sorry for that joke, except for to my two children who are in this room. And hopefully they don't get it. So... But we're picking up where we left off. If you have your Bibles, open up to the Song of Solomon, chapter 1. We'll pick up in verse 7 where we left off last week. We dealt with verse 7, but I think we got to start there again this week. And as we do, I want to recap verses 1 through 6 for you. Verses 1 through 6, we see this love story to start to take shape. Now, this is a man and woman who are married, looking back and writing poetry about the time they first met. And the way that she remembers is she remembers herself as an unattractive woman. 2 times she calls herself unattractive, so she's got some insecurities that were created by her time working out in the fields. She looked differently than the people who the world said were attractive. And so she says, by those standards, I'm unattractive. But she also has this godly confidence about her. I love it. She says in her poem, she says, hey, I'm unattractive, but lovely. There's something about her, in her beauty, that she knows and that it has value and that it's not based on how she looks. She remembers back to her attraction to the man, Solomon, and she remembers back to her attraction, and she remembers that he's good looking, but her attraction really started to kindle when she started to notice his character. And she actually takes note that that's what the other ladies were into also. And remember, I said he wasn't popular, he was respected. He was a man of character. It was his character. She likens him to the top shelf extra virgin olive oil, the oil poured out. Now, I'm going to start this morning by asking a question. I would love for your participation. By show of hands, this is not like sketchy. You can answer, I promise. By show of hands, how many of you in here have ever gotten hurt in a dating relationship? Like, anyone who's dated, and I mean, unless you're a sociopath, like anybody who's dated and not ended up with that person. Maybe you are married to the only person you dated. That would be great. I wish that was my case. But most of us in this room have all had some form of hurt. And so the question that goes along with that is, if dating hurts so bad, why do we do it in the first place? Like, why is it worth it? And maybe a better question is not why do we date, because like we know we date because we have hormones, and we date because we want to get married someday, and it seems like the most logical path to marriage. But why do we enter into dating so flippantly then? If we have a whole room full of people who shot up their hand about the pain that they've experienced at the hands of dating, or someone they've dated, then why do we enter into it so easily? Why is it something we don't ask more questions about? Why don't we take more time before we actually enter into that? Now, we have to delineate a couple things. There's going on a date, which is basically pretty easy. Like, you just show up, you either like the person, you don't. You're there primarily for the same reasons you go to school, for observation and education. So you go, you show up, observe. Are they crazy? If I continue to date them, will they take me back to their behind their shed and leave my body there? Like, what? Who is this person that I'm thinking about entering into a relationship with? There's no expectation. Like, at the end of the night, you're like, either I'd like to see you again or I don't want to see you again. But that's the extent of the date. There's no escalation. There's no, it's just simply a date. There's not a lot of intimacy. There's no, and you can go on dates and it's easy. It's fine. But when you move into the next category, which is dating, that's when it gets a little dicey. Because all of a sudden, you're no longer in it just for observation and education. Now you're investing over time, over and over and over again. You're investing in this relationship. Expectations fill a dating relationship. Escalation happens immediately. And all of a sudden, over time, you move from a small level of intimacy, and I'm not talking physical, I'm talking emotional. Now you're moving on the scale to more and more and deeper intimacy. That's what dating, that's the escalation pattern of dating. And if you're not, you should break up. Because the goal of dating is to become more intimate with each other. That's the only, you can't just turn it on when you get married. Like you have to become more emotionally intimate over time. But what I will say is with that, with a dating relationship comes also temptation. There's not a lot of temptation on a date. But when you're dating, temptation follows. As that intimacy increases, so temptation also increases. Now today, I think we start dating far too early. Like we've got 13-year-olds who are like, my boyfriend, like your boyfriend? Like, he can't even drive. What is it, your boyfriend? We've got high school guys or guys and girls or college guys and girls that they're like, we're dating. And you're like, you know full well that dude is still on his dad's car insurance. And you're like, why? Where do you get off? Like it's a crazy thing, and I think we start dating too early because I really believe, and I need you to understand this is at the heart of who I am as a dad, who I am as a pastor. I really believe that dating is something you should only do when you can bear the weight of someone else's trust. When somebody else puts their trust in you, that you're gonna obey their boundaries. When someone puts their trust in you, that you're gonna be able to hold on to their heart, that you're not gonna shatter into a million pieces. When someone can put their trust in you, that you're not gonna see another girl that you find more attractive and go and be with her. When you can bear the weight of someone else's trust, then you're ready to date. And so that means, I don't care if you're in high school or college or you're 70 years old. There are some 70-year-olds that should not date because they can't bear the weight of someone else's trust. It's at the core of dating and what it looks like. Now, I want to share with you, those of you who are dads, how many of you have daughters, dads of daughters? Okay, so you either have had in the past, have currently, or are developing your philosophy on what it will look like for a boy someday to date your daughter. Someday. So I'm going to offer my philosophy on boys dating my daughter, and maybe you can add that to your tool chest. But I've been poured into over years and years by some men who are godly pastors. We had a teaching team over at the campus that I taught at the Well in Fresno. And between the three of us, four of us, there was 14 girls and 0 boys. If you add our executive pastor in, there's 18 girls and 0 boys, and they're all one stage ahead of me. And so I just had godly dad advice being poured into me. And here's where I've landed. I've got a 15-year-old. We're there, right? And so here's where I've landed. Until the age of 16, we're not even having a conversation about dating. Like 0. Like it's not, come to me, hey, I really want to date, Dad. No. Okay, see you later. Like that's what I expect. And she knows it. All my girls know until the age of 16, we're not even having the conversation about dating. No 15-year-old is old enough to bear the weight of someone else's trust. It can't be trusted to them. And nowadays, we've got 13-year-olds doing different things in the bathroom that when I was 13, nobody was doing. Like, when I was 13, the weirdest thing was like, they're holding hands. And see, by laughter of the front row, it's not like that anymore. That was your daughter, by the way. The age of 16. The age of 16 is where the conversation starts. Now, at 16, it gets a little different. It changes. Because some of you are like, oh, you can't talk about it till 16, and then at 16 you're okay with it, right? No, I'm not okay with it. So here's the thing. I am not okay with my daughters ever dating boys. They're going to date young men on the precipice of manhood. Like, that's what I expect. Because a boy will not be able to bear the weight of her trust. But someone who's on the precipice, look, I'm saying full manhood. I'm saying someone who embraces biblical manhood, who wants to be someday the type of husband that she might need. And so I have no interest in her dating boys. Now, at 16, if she can come to me and she can articulate clearly how a dating relationship with this young man will benefit her life physically, spiritually, and emotionally, I'm engaged in that conversation. But she's got to be able to tell me all three ways that this relationship will fill her life. Physically, spiritually, and emotionally. And you're like, okay, if she does that, then can she date the guy? No. Then he has to prove to me that he's actually a young man on the precipice of manhood and can bear the weight of someone else's trust. And you say to me, then that sounds really strict. Yes, that's the point. Because up until she's out on her own, up until really she takes a man as her husband, I'm responsible for stewarding her heart. That's a responsibility that I take very seriously. And so he needs to come to me and explain to me why he is enough of a man to be able to date my daughter. And then, when that happens, I will get out my gun. Take him in, give him a little tour of my gun safe. And let him know what will happen if he ever takes advantage or defiles my daughter under my watch. Her life has been entrusted to me by God. Her purity has been entrusted to me by God. And it's something I take very seriously. Now, you may think that's strict. I had a guy come up to me, a friend of mine, after the last service, and he's like, oh, thanks for sharing. He's like, here's my philosophy. Even after that, like when they come to pick up my daughter for the first date, I'm going to hand them a bullet and say, this bullet travels faster after 10. I thought that might be crossing the line to threat, but hey, you do you. I can't tell you what to do. But the point is, dating is not just something that's fun that we get to do when we start having hormones. Like, hormones are not the thing that says, hey, let's start dating. Like, let's just get into a relationship so we can get our needs met, so we can feel wanted and desired. And I've known so many 15 and 16 and 17-year-old girls. I've known so many 40-year-old girls who are single, find themselves single again, who get into dating just because they want to feel pursued. This is dangerous. It's something that should be approached with caution. Now, our couple doesn't get married until chapter 3 of the poem, but now we're going to dive into their dating relationship a little bit, from attraction now to dating. So if you have your Bibles, open up to Song of Solomon, chapter 1, starting in verse 7. We covered this last week. She says, tell me whom my soul loves, where you pasture your flock, where you make it lie down at noon, for why should I be like the one who veils herself beside the flocks of your companions? And she puts herself out there. She says, I want to spend time with you. But she also tells him up front, and before anything else, there are things I'm not willing to do. I'm not willing to be someone who compromises her values. And so before they ever enter into a date, even at the very beginning when they're starting to talk about dating, she lays out her values and says, are you cool with that? You good with that? Because here's the problem. Like, imagine you don't have this conversation and you're kissing and all of a sudden, like, you look around and nobody's there, which is a bad idea. We'll get into that in a minute. But you decide then and there, like, I got to figure out what my boundaries are. Guess what? If you try to decide where your line should be in the heat of the moment, you'll blow right past the line. The line you want to have in the heat of the moment is not the line you want to have sitting here in church today. And so if you wait and you decide, I'm not going to have that conversation, I'm not going to make boundaries, then you're going to blow right past the line that you never intended to blow right past. And here she sets her boundaries, and he has no problem. He agrees with them. We're going to see that play out in the rest of the passage. Now, we're going to hear now from Solomon for the first time. He says in verse 8, if you do not know, O most beautiful among women, follow in the tracks of the flock and pasture your young goats beside the shepherd's tents. Now, he's flirting with her, if you couldn't tell by the hot and heavy language that he's using here. He's flirting with her. He's being playful. He's basically saying, come and find me. Come and find me. Like, if you don't know, then come and find me. And here's how you can find me. Follow the path of the goats. And you're like, what? Well, it would be like if I said, go to Barfield Park and follow the hiking trails. They've been carved out for you. So every day, these shepherds would take their sheep to the place where they would graze, and then they would bring them back to the place where they were stored. And then the next day, they would do the same. And the next thing they would do the same. And so on and so forth. And so he's carved out the path, and he's just saying, hey, if you want me, come and find me. And it's just a playful banter back and forth. And I say this, husbands and wives, if you've lost the art of flirting, bring it back. Look, flirting is a good thing. And all too often, when we get into the rut of marriage that sometimes marriage creates, we forget that flirting is a good thing. We forget that a little innuendo every now and then between a husband and a wife is a good thing. Now, husbands, flirting is not like smacking your wife on the backside. Like, that's not what they consider flirting. You do, so maybe wives smack your husband on the backside. But a thoughtful, flirtatious personality goes a long way in a marriage. Get back to flirting. And he's flirting with her. He's like, hey, come now and find me. And then in the next verse, he's gonna continue, and he's gonna speak some love into her. He says, I compare you, my love, to a mare among Pharaoh's chariots. Now, I would not encourage, as your flirtatious exploits, to go and call your wife a horse. Especially after you smack her backside. But what he's doing is he's saying, I compare you to the rarest of breeds. So Pharaoh he was well known. His team would breed these champion horses. His chariots were stocked with horses like no other kingdom. And he would breed them, and then kings would come from all over with desire to actually have the mares that he is now breeding. And so he looks at her and he says, you're like Pharaoh's mares. Like anyone would want to have you. You are the best of all the breed. Like you were everything that anyone could ever be looking at. And so he compares her now to Pharaoh's mares, and he's saying that she's unique among other women. And then in verse 10, he continues and he says, your cheeks are lovely with ornaments, your neck with strings of jewels, and he's just complimenting her. Husbands, learn something. And look, babe, you're hot is not the compliment that she's looking for. Maybe every now and then, but what about her character? What about something you've never mentioned to her? What about putting some thought into the compliments that you pay her? Maybe you just tell her your cheeks are lovely with ornaments. I don't know. It would be weird, but you could do it. He can, and so he compliments her. And then in the next verse, her community, the daughters of Jerusalem, are going to now chime in. Look at verse 11. We will make for you ornaments of gold studded with silver. So she's getting ready for this date. He's like, it's on, come find me. Let's do this thing. Let's date. I'm ready to start spending time with you. And now her friends chime in. And they say, hey, we're going to make you ornaments of gold studded with silver. We want to help you succeed on this date. Now, here's why that's important. See, oftentimes we have friends that we've known for years. Think about your best friends, the friends you've built your life with, the friends who've seen you in your worst moments, the friends who've seen you in your best moments, the friends you've told all the stuff to, where you giggle in the front row of church going, ooh. And oftentimes when we meet someone, we're so attracted to that person that we neglect to remember they might know what they're talking about. They might know us best. They might have spent more time with us. They may be able to see the things we can't see. So we're driving home from Nashville this morning, and I'm merging onto the interstate. And all of a sudden, I'm just driving. Everything's normal. And my wife goes, ah! I may have exaggerated a little bit, but not much. Let me tell you, it's not much. And I'm like, it made me jump, and like there's this big rig just merging, but he has his own lane. She thought he was coming into our lane. She thought we were gonna die. She's like, who's gonna take the kids? We already by that point, she's like, it's over. And she just like literally thought it was over. The point is, she thought that big rig was in my blind spot. And sometimes we have big rigs that are in our blind spots. But here's the cool thing, which she neglected to understand. My car has blind spot detection. I don't even need to look over there, and I can tell there's someone in my blind spot. But that's what our friends are. They're blind spot detection. They detect the blind spots in our lives, and they help us to see what we maybe don't see on our own. So here's the first point in how to date well. Front 2 rows. You guys taking notes? Okay, good. Don't isolate, date in community. Date in community. So your friends know you best. The people you let in know you best. Your parents know you best. They've raised you. They changed your diapers. Not me so much, but Kristen. Don't isolate, date in community. Because what happens a lot of times is we meet that person. Our friends aren't that keen on them. They're like, do you really want to date that guy? And you're like, yep. And so you withdraw so you could be with him instead of with them. And you take away the godly wisdom that's in your life so that you can be with someone you shouldn't be with in the first place. But if we date in community, now we bring wisdom into every situation. Now, if you hear 5 of your best friends that they all say why you shouldn't date that person, you probably should listen to them. It's probably wise counsel. And so don't isolate, date in community. Now, we're going to see the next principle play out in the next verse. It says, while the king was on his couch, my nard gave forth its fragrance. And so what she's saying, it's a weird way of saying it, but it's poetic, I guess. What she's saying is, when I saw the king reclining at his banquet table, my perfume gave forth its fragrance as I approached. So she's getting closer to him. The date is happening. They're at his banquet table. Well, you know it's not private? A king's banquet table. It's public. And so she walks into a public space, and that's where they're dating. They're not dating in private. They're dating in a place where they can be seen. Here's the second principle to dating well. Date publicly. Date publicly. Look, if your dates are happening in a closed-door bedroom, you're only like 2 steps away from doing something you don't want to do. Date publicly. I don't know. How many of you guys like restaurants? Anybody go to restaurants? What's your favorite? Let's yell it out. Olive Garden. Okay. What else? Chili's. That's a good one. I like Chili's. Okay. So here's the funny thing. I've never seen premarital sex happen at a Chili's. Never. Never one time. And nobody's ever come into my office and been like, hey, we crossed the line, we shouldn't. Oh, man, what happened? Well, we're in a Chili's booth, and, it just got hot and heavy. We love the queso dip is incredible. Nobody says that. Nobody crossed the line at Chick-fil-A. Like, that would be even worse. Like, this is the house of God. Nobody accidentally crosses boundary when they're in public. But if you're dating privately, if you find yourself snuggled up on a couch when no one's home, your alarm bells should go off. We got to date publicly. Now, as we look at the next passages, we're going to start to see some more love being shown to this woman. It says, my beloved is to me a sachet of myrrh that lies between my breasts. Now, this is believed to be Solomon speaking, and so he's talking about his pectoral muscles. My beloved is to me a cluster of henna blossoms in the vineyards of En-Gedi. Now, En-Gedi is in the south of Israel. It's a place in the wilderness of Israel. And when I say wilderness in Tennessee, oftentimes you will think like the forest, right? But the wilderness of Israel is not a forest, it's a desert. It's a desert. And so what he's saying is you're like an oasis in the middle of a desert. You bring refreshment into my soul. So he looks and he's continuing to shower her with these compliments. Now, remember what's happened in the first 6 verses. 2 times she's laid her insecurities out on the table. 2 times she's told him how unattractive she feels. And now he's going, I know you think that about yourself, but let me show you through my eyes. And he continues. He says, behold, you are beautiful, my love. Behold, you are beautiful. Your eyes are doves. Men, this one will work. Not all of these will work, but this one, take it to the bank. This one will work. And he says, behold, you are beautiful, beloved, truly delightful. Our couch is green. And the beams of our house are cedar. Our rafters are pine. Like, we're strong together. Get that? Like, we're strong. Now, as you notice, he leads twice, or she leads twice with her insecurities. Now, he's pouring into her, and it's starting to have an effect. Look at what happens in verse 1 of chapter 2. She says, I am a rose of Sharon. Well, that's different. That's a bit of a change in perspective. I'm a rose of Sharon, a lily of the valley. She says, as a lily among brambles or thorns, so is my love among the young women. And so now all of a sudden he's speaking life into her, and she's starting to believe what he's putting out there. She sees herself as unattractive, but he's going, no. I want you to know how truly attractive you are. And he starts to tell her how he sees her, and she's going, okay, I'm starting to see what this man sees in me. And she says, I'm beautiful. Even among the thorns, like I'm a lily among the thorns, and a lily among brambles is my love among the young women. He's looking at me, he's like, you're the only one I see. The other women all around are thorns. You're the one I want to be with. You're the one for me. He says in verse 3, as an apple tree among the trees of the forest, so is my beloved among the young men. That with great delight I sat in his shadow, and his fruit was sweet to my taste. So she says that as an apple, he's like an apple tree among the trees of the forest. Now, I'm not from here. I grew up in the desert, but I've never walked through a forest and seen a random fruit tree. Like I've never done it. Like you can go, you can see lots of like pine trees and trees I don't know what the heck they are. You can walk through, you can get some ticks. You got some deer blinds in there, but I've never ever seen a fruit tree that just pops up in the middle of the forest. Now, she's saying that you are like a fruit tree in the middle of the forest. You're that rare, you're that valuable. You're like a fruit tree in the middle of a forest. And so she responds about Solomon that he's also rare, as a rare fruit tree in the middle of a forest. And she says this, in the rest of this verse and the following verse, she's going to give us 3 ways that he has satisfied her by who he is. First, she says, with great delight I sat in the shadow. With great delight I sat in the shadow. She says he protects her. Think back to her past. She was out in the field. The very reason that she feels unattractive is because she was out in the field and the sun was just beating down on her day in and day out. And now he gives her all of this praise, all of these compliments, and she likens him to the shadow that she can sit under. See, the sun took away her her beauty, but he's restoring it. He's protecting her from the things that make her feel unattractive. Second, he gives her intimate friendship. He gives her intimate friendship. It's the concept of taste is the in the Hebrew is the idea of knowing someone intimately. It's taste and see that the Lord is good, right? That verse in the Old Testament where it's talking about knowing someone deeply and intimately. He's given her an intimate friendship, which guys, if you need to know what a girl wants, it's this. Look, she's not going to be attracted to your body. It's just not going to happen. Like, it's not how they're wired, most of them. That's a generality. Some are, but most of them are not first attracted to your body. They're attracted to the way you connect with them, to the intimacy you bring into their lives. If you're looking for a relationship, it happens because you're willing to enter in and be known, be fully known and fully loved. Now, with that said, there's a third way in verse 4. It says, he brought me to the banqueting house, and his banner over me was love. His banner over me was what? Okay, so what this is saying, the term banner, so he brings me into the banqueting house, which is the public place, and as they're on their date, he puts his banner over her. A banner was a sign of ownership. So it's a military term, like if you win the war, you plant your flag, and you now own or occupy whatever it was that you overtook. Now, there are two ways of doing this, right? There's a one way that, like, if he would have walked in, like his hands all around her, and he's like, hey, yo, she's mine. Sit down, woman. Like, that's one way. Like, you can control a woman. Look, and that feels awful. And some of you, like, that might even be triggering. Like, you've had some man in your life who's treated you that way, like they own you, like you're a piece of property. That's not what he did. Instead, he put his banner over her with what? Love. With love, which means as they're sitting there publicly, he makes his love known publicly. He doesn't put his banner over her by controlling her. He puts his banner over her by opening the car door for her. He puts his banner over her by opening the door. I was talking about our trip in the first service, and I noticed something about my wife. We walked up to the hotel door several times as we would go in and out, and most of the time, not all the time, but most of the time, she would just walk up and wait. She knew that I was going to open the door for her. And partly because the door is heavy, not just because I'm a faithful husband. It was a super heavy door. But I just thought as I was prepping for this message, like, this is a great illustration of what it might look like to make my love known publicly. Like, maybe he's pulling out the chair for her as they sat down for dinner. Maybe they're flirting a little bit at the dinner table. Maybe at the end of the night, he actually gets out of the car and walks her to the door, makes sure she gets in safe. Maybe at the beginning of the night, he doesn't just pull up and honk and go, hey babe, get in. Maybe he actually gets up and risks that maybe her dad might answer the door, but it's worth it because he's a man. He's willing to go to the door to make sure she feels comforted as she's walked to the car, or valued, that like he could be bothered to get out of the car. And I want you to notice again what's happening. Notice again, she puts her insecurities out there, and he responds first by speaking life into her, and second by putting his money where his mouth is, and letting his actions guide how he shows and puts his love on display. And I want you to see her response. Now, this is not meant to be a form of manipulation. It's just a fact. But watch her response. She says, sustain me with raisins, refresh me with apples, for I am sick with love. Oh my gosh. Woo! Can you feel the heat there? That is hot language. I'm not kidding. Like, this is I'm like, is this in the Bible? Really, God? Here's what I mean. And you're looking at that, you're like, this is stupid. I don't even like raisins. Okay, so she has insecurities. He responds. He pours life into her through his words and actions, and now she's just stricken. So she says, sustain me with raisins, which is really raisin cakes, but also with apples. Some of your Bibles may say like nectarines or apricots or pomegranates. See, back in those days, seeded fruits were seen as an aphrodisiac. We see that in 2 Samuel. So back in 2 Samuel, King David and his men bring the Ark of the Covenant back, and they're really excited. Like, it's been gone for a long time. They win the battle. They bring it back. And here's what he says in 2 Samuel 6, starting in verse 18. He says, and when David had finished offering the burnt offerings and the peace offerings, so an act of worship, right? He blessed the people in the name of the Lord of hosts. And we're like, okay, that sounds good. And then in verse 19, he distributed among all the people, the whole multitude of Israel, both men and women, a cake of bread, a portion of meat, and a cake of raisins to each one. Then all the people departed, each to his own house. And so what David did is he says, it's time to worship. The Ark of the Covenant is back. God's been faithful. So I want you to go home, enjoy a great meal, and make love to your wife. And here's a little Viagra to help you out. Like, that's what he's saying. Like, he's like, hey, I'm going to give you this. I want you to go, and I want you to worship. And here's the thing. If we don't think of our marriage bed as a place of worship, we're missing the point. God created you. He gave you those desires. He created a sexual union between a man and a wife to be a place of worship. And David sends people home to worship. And he says, go home and make love to your spouse as an act of worship. And now she's saying, sustain me with raisins. Refresh me with apples, for I'm sick with love. And she's putting her desire out on the table. She's putting her desire out on the table for him to now deal with. He's created a space where she feels loved, taken care of, and respected. And now she's free to have passions. If you don't put your love on display publicly, men, don't be surprised if she isn't excited to put your love on display privately. If she doesn't feel cared for in public, if she doesn't feel connected to you, don't be excited. Don't be surprised if she's not excited to put it on display privately. Look, it's not a manipulation tool. It's just a fact. You have to pour into your marriage. And sometimes we expect output when we're not giving input. And I know this can sound like husband bashing. I'm not. I'm just giving you the truth. This is God's word. And if it's husband bashing, maybe it's just some conviction you're feeling inside of like, maybe I need to do a little bit better. And if you're not convinced that that's what that means, let me show you the next verse. Verse 6, his left hand is under my head and his right hand embraces me. It looks like this. This is not a sexual connection. This is not a sexual pose. Like he's saying, bring it in close, or she's saying, bring it in close. I want to be close to you. I want you to put your left hand around my neck, and I want you to embrace my lower back with your right hand. She's coming on to him. She can't help but express the passion she has. And yeah, if you're reading this correctly, they're at a very important point in their relationship. They're at a very temptation-filled point in their relationship, which is dating, by the way. Temptation fills dating relationships. Married couples, here's a warning though. Before we get to that, here's a warning. When neglect is met with attention, passion is easily kindled. So here, it's a double warning. First is, if you don't neglect your spouse, then passion will be kindled. But if you do neglect your spouse and she's met with attention from someone else, passion is easily kindled. Look, I'm not victim blaming. I'm not saying it's the cheated on's fault for getting cheated on in the first place. What I'm saying is it's preventable. What I'm saying is God's word shows us that when neglect is met with attention, passion is kindled. So don't neglect your spouse. Because there's not a single spouse that, well, there is, but not in the church at least that I know of, that wants their passion to be kindled with another person. There's passion that's coming from the way that her neglect was met with his attention. And now in verse 7, Solomon shows us the type of man he is. I adjure you, O daughters of Jerusalem. This is for everyone. This is not just for my wife. We see, I adjure you, O daughters of Jerusalem, by the gazelles or the does of the field. Have you ever approached a deer and tried to feed it? Or you're with your kids. We do this sometimes. We'll have deer in our backyard, and the kids will want to feed it. And when they were younger, especially, our youngest kids would just see a deer and they'd be like, deer! And they just take off running. Well, what happens? It flees, right? And so he says, I adjure you by the gazelles or the does of the field that you not stir up or awaken love until it pleases. This is one of 3 times in this book where he's going to say this. He says, don't stir up or awaken love until it pleases. I don't know your history, and I'm not going to ask for a show of hands for this, but I'm going to be transparent. This is not my story. My story is not I had a woman come on to me and I was no woman. I'm it's just, I wasn't a Christian until I was 17, and did I wait to have intercourse until marriage? Yes, but there are other things, there are other lines that were crossed, and because when a woman comes on to you as a man, it's really hard to say no. But Solomon shows us his character. In the midst of her saying, I want some raisin cakes and apples, he's like, don't stir up or awaken love until it pleases. Remember, passion is not wrong. Desires are not wrong if they're done in the right context. This is fire, in case you're wondering. Now, fire is a wonderful thing, right? Some of you have fire pits in your backyard. If you do, invite us over. We'd love to have s'mores. But some of you have fire pits in your backyard, and as the weather starts to cool off, last night was beautiful. The day's a little hot still, but as it starts to cool off, you may find yourself out next to the fire pit having a fire. That's great. Some of you have fireplaces in your homes. We're moving to a house that does, and my wife's very excited to have a fireplace. You have a fire in there, it heats up your home, right? It brings warmth to the home. Now, some of you don't have a fireplace in your home, but it still gets cold at night. And so would it be smart for you to go dump a bunch of logs and lighter fluid on your couch and light it on fire? No, right? What would happen? The house would burn down. A fire in the right context is beautiful, and it brings warmth to the entire home. But in the wrong context, a fire burns everything down. And we have far too many young people who are not married, lighting couch fires to try and satisfy the warmth that they desire. My hope is that through this series, our young people, those who aren't married, will be able to have a picture, understanding of sex that is beautiful. It is wonderful in the context of marriage. But outside of marriage, it is reckless. Outside of marriage, it creates damage and it burns down the house. Now, as I wrap up, I have to acknowledge that in a room this size, there's really nobody that's done this correctly. I might stand up here and I might have a microphone and I can tell you I didn't do this correctly. But almost nobody does it correctly, whether it's boundaries that were crossed or it's people you dated that you shouldn't have dated or lack of wisdom in how you went about it. Nobody in this room has dated correctly. And some of you are like, I dated 100% correctly. You're in denial. all of us make mistakes. The degree and the scope of the mistakes, man, those are different. Those are different for everyone. But here's what I do. I want you to understand that even as you listen, many of you are thinking, I wish I would have done dating differently. But that's why we have the gospel. That's why we have the gospel. So when we look back at our past and we realize I didn't do everything the way I should have, Jesus is like, I got you. I died on the cross for that. We have the gospel so that we can look back on who we were and we can realize that the cross comes to bear on all of our sin, past, present, and future. We can look at the cross and we can realize that Jesus died so that we wouldn't be filled with guilt and shame. We can look at our future and realize that the cross and the gospel comes to bear on how we live the rest of our life. Young people in here, singles, those of you who are not married, I want you to listen to me. Because you have a chance to do what many of us in this room failed to do. And you have a chance to do what we don't have the chance to do again. You have a chance to do things the way that God designed them to be. To date with integrity. To honor the other person. To wait until you have a fireplace to light the fire. My prayer for all of us, whether you're single or you're married, my prayer is that Jesus would redeem both our dating experiences and our dating philosophies. And that by his grace, from here on out, no matter what your past looked like, that we would do dating and relationships